This is part 1 of solving linear equations with one variable. Let's say I give you a question, 5 plus some number is equal to 10. You might be able to tell me right away that 5 plus 5 is going to be equal to 10. But you need to know how to do this mathematically in case you have a harder question. Let's say you would have 3 over 4x plus 12 over 17 is equal to 9 over 15. You need to know how to solve this equation. And in order to do that, you need to know how to solve this equation using math. So how do we do that? We're going to represent this question mark by a variable. We could use x, y, z. We're going to use x. So 5 plus x is just taking the place of some number is equal to 10. Now we want to get x alone. If we have x alone on this left side of the equation, then we know what x is. If we subtract 5 over here, we're allowed to do that only if we subtract 5 from the other side also. That way they're still equal. If we subtract 5 from the left side and we subtract 5 from the right side, the equation still makes sense. So these two cancel each other out. 5 minus 5 just cancel each other out. And we're left with x is equal to 10 minus 5, which is 5. And that's what we assumed that the answer would be. Let's try another equation. Let's say I give you 5 minus some number, we don't know what the number is equal to negative 10. How would you solve this? Either you could try numbers and see which number could I put in place for x, but you might not want to sit there and try out all the numbers that you think are bigger than 5. Instead, what you want to do is you want to get the x alone. If you have the x alone, you know what x is. How can you get the x alone? You could subtract 5 from both sides. And you're left with negative x, you have to keep the minus sign there, is equal to minus 10 minus 5, which is minus 15. But you want to solve for plain x, not negative x. So what do? Divide this side by negative, divide this side by negative. You can't just divide by a negative sign. So we're dividing by a negative 1, and divide by a negative 1. Negative x divided by negative 1, these two negatives cancel out, and we're left with x over 1, which is just x. And negative 15 divided by negative 1, the two negatives cancel out. We're left with 15 over 1, which is 15. So x is 15. Now you can always check your work to see if you got it right. Let's rewrite the problem and check the work. 5 minus x is equal to negative 10. Now we know we just solved that x is equal to 15. So we're going to plug that in over there. 5 minus 15 is equal to negative 10. Does this make sense? 5 minus 15 is negative 10. Negative 10 is equal to negative 10. Therefore, we got the answer correct. Let's try another example. X minus 5 is equal to 10. What number minus 5 will give us 10? Let's solve it mathematically. If we add 5 to this side, we have to add 5 to the other side. By adding 5, this 5, the 5 in the question cancels out, because negative 5 plus 5 cancel each other out, and we're left with x is equal to 10 plus 5, which is 15. Now let's check the answer to make sure we got it right. Here's the question again. X minus 5 is equal to 10. And we're going to plug in x equals to 15 over here. So 15 minus 5 is equal to 10. 15 minus 5 is 10. 10 is equal to 10. Therefore, we got it right. Another example. 4 times x is equal to 12. Another way we could write this question so that you don't get confused, you don't have to put a dot over here, you don't have to put a little x over here. You could just write 4x is equal to 12. And we assume that if you write the 4 next to the x, you're multiplying them. We need 4 times some number, x represents a number that we don't know, is going to give me 12. So which number is that? You might be able to figure it out, but how would you do it mathematically? If you want to get the x alone, so you want to know what x is. If you divide away the 4 from the x, and you divide then you have to divide 4 from the other side. So 4x divided by 4, the 4's can cancel out. We're just left with x. and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So x is equal to 3. Now let's see if we got it right. 4 times x is equal to 12, and we're plugging in, for the x, we're plugging in 3. So 4, if you write a number in parentheses, you're assuming that you're multiplying it. You don't need to put a dot there, and you don't need to put an x there. 4 times 3 is equal to 12. 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 is equal to 12, so we got the answer correct. The answer to this question is x is equal to 3. Let's do one more like that. We have 6x is equal to 10. Now, you might know that 6 times some number, that number is going to have to either be a fraction or a decimal, because 6 times, you can't get 6 times a whole number that's going to give you 10. So which fraction, which decimal is this? You can either solve it in your head, but you don't want to do that. You want to solve it mathematically. You want to get the x alone to find what x is. If you divide the left side of the equation by 6 to get rid of that 6, these 6's are going to cancel out. But you can't just divide one side of the equation by something. You have to divide both sides of the equation by the same thing to make sure the equation is still equal. Now we're left, on the left side, we're left with x. And on the right side, we're left with 10 over 6. Now you can simplify this. 10 over 6 is 5 over 3. And x is equal to 5 over 3. Now let's plug it back in and see if we got the right answer. 6 times x is equal to 10. And we're plugging in, for x, we're plugging in 5 over 3. So 6 times 5 over 3 is equal to 10. Let's solve this. 6 times 5 is 30 over 3, and we want to make that equal to 10. Is 30 over 3 is 10. 10 is equal to 10. Therefore, we got the answer right. X is equal to 5 over 3. Let's try one that's a little bit harder. 1/6 of x is equal to 3. We need 1/6 of some number that's going to give us 3. How do we find what that number is? If we multiply the left side of the equation by the reciprocal of the coefficient of x, so the coefficient of x is 1 over 6, if we multiply it by the reciprocal, by 6 over 1, then 6 over 1 times 1 over 6, let's see what that gives us. 6 times 1 is 6, 1 times 6 is 6, 6 over 6 is 1. So we would just be left with an x. So x is equal to, we can't just leave the 3 how it is. If we multiply 6 over 1 by one side of the equation by 6 over 1, we have to multiply the other side of the equation by 6 over 1 as well. So this would be 3 times 6 over 1. What's 3 times 6 over 1? We could just drop the denominator over here because it's over 1. So x is equal to 3 times 6, and x is equal to 18. Let's see, did we get the question right? The original question was 1 over 6. X is equal to 3. And we want to plug in x is equal to 18. See if we got it right. 1 over 6 times 18, 1/6 of 18. Will that give us 3? Let's see, 1 over 6 times 18. So we're going to be 1 times 18 is 18 over 6 is equal to 3. 18 divided by 6 is 3. 3 is equal to 3, so we got the question right. The question we just did was 1 over 6x is equal to 3. And we solved the question by multiplying both sides of the equation by the reciprocal of the coefficient of x. So since the coefficient of x is 1 over 6, we multiply both sides of the equation by 6 over 1, or 6. Another way that question could have been written is x over 6 is equal to 3. Because we could combine, in this term over here, we could multiply the 1 times the x and bring the x into the numerator, and we would get x over 6. And now we would solve it the same way. We want to get rid of the denominator. So we can multiply this side of the equation by 6 over 1. We can multiply this side of the equation by 6 over 1. And now let's see how this would help us. 6 over 1 times x over 6. This becomes 6x over 6. These 6's can cancel out, and we're just left with x. So on the left side, we're left with x, and on the right side, we're left with 3 times 6 over 1. 6 over 1 is just 6, and we're left with x is equal to 18, which is what we got the last time we did it. So 1 over 6x is equal to 3. Be the exact same question if we wrote it as x over 6, is equal to 3. And for both of them, we would get the answer as x is equal to 18. Let's try another example. 1/10 of x is equal to 3 over 4. We want to figure out what x is. 1/10 of what number will give us 3/4? How do we solve that? We need to get x alone. So we can multiply by the reciprocal of the coefficient of x. The coefficient of x is 1 over 10, so we're going to multiply by 10 over 1. And since we're multiplying the left side of the equation by 10 over 1, we have to multiply the right side of the equation by 10 over 1 also. So 10 over 1 times 1 over 10, the reason we did it is because we wanted these to cancel out, because we know 1 times 10 is 10, 1 times 10 is 10, 10 over 10 is 1, so we're just left with x. X is equal to 3 over 4 times 10 over 1. This becomes 30 over 4, and we can simplify this to 15 over 2. Now let's see if we got the question right. The original question was 1 over 10x is equal to 3 over 4, and we solved for x a second ago, so we're going to just plug that in right over there. 1 over 10 times 15 over 2. 1 times 15 is 15. 10 times 2 is 20. Is that equal to 3 over 4? Let's simplify it. They're both, the 15 and 20 are both divisible by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 20 divided by 5 is 4. 3 over 4 is equal to 3 over 4. Therefore, the answer is correct. Another way we could have written the exact same equation would have been x over 10 is equal to 3 over 4. And we would have solved it the same way by multiplying by 10 over 1, by multiplying by 10 over 1, and we would have gotten the exact same answer of 15 over 2.